Oh, that's a good topic. What's your fantasy weapon of choice? So my ideal fantasy weapon. Okay, I am not trained to use a sword. Okay, a sword is a skilled weapon that you have to train for a long time to get good at, okay? And fights are usually over quicker than you think they will be. So you need to be able to decisively end a fight if you're choosing a fantasy weapon, and we're assuming that, like, we're on a level playing field of, like, nobody has guns. Like, you know, we're not fighting nukes or anything. Swords are not the thing that I would go with. Daggers is a similar thing. It would be good to have a hunting knife, for sure. Maybe like a skinning knife, hunting knife kind of thing. I mean, maybe you could carry a dagger as a backup weapon, but I don't know that it would be very useful, right? Because, like, obviously, again, daggers, bladed weapons, you have to be pretty talented with them. They require extremely close quarters, which is, like, for a small-ish person, that's the opposite of what you want. I don't know, I guess I'm not that small. Like, I don't know, I weigh like 150-ish pounds or something like that. I don't know, I'm like somewhere in the middle there. So I guess I'm not that tiny, but I just don't think that getting super close quarters is a good call for me personally, right? I think any person who is alive during a medieval setting requires a bow, but a hunting bow, probably. So, but you have to be at least, like, kind of good with it, otherwise you don't eat, you know? So, hunting bow, which can serve as a weapon. You could have, like, a really nice hunting bow. I guess you could always use a longbow as a hunting bow, but it's like, is that your primary weapon, though, is the question? Am I hauling around a bow and arrows as my primary weapon? Or is that just my thing that I'm using to keep myself fed? Probably that's the thing that I'm using to keep myself fed. I like the idea of a hammer, because a hammer doesn't have to pay attention to what kind of armor class your opponent is using. You'd also need to be able to know how to do bow maintenance and to string and unstring them. That's true. That's a skill you would have to have, like, but having a bow is required. So learning how to do bow maintenance is required. And no matter what weapon you have, it's going to require probably some amount of maintenance that you would have to do. Like, if you have a hammer, you're going to need to oil it. So what about a crossbow? Crossbows take a really long time to load, is the main problem with them. I honestly feel like a bow would be easier to travel than a crossbow. Like, I guess if the crossbow was made to be collapsible, I just feel like if it were made to be collapsible, then it wouldn't be as strong and sturdy, and I wouldn't trust it as much. I don't think crossbow is the way for me, personally. I fancy the idea of a hammer, is what I was saying, because a hammer is something that doesn't have to pay attention to the armor class. Like, you know, if they're wearing plate, if they're wearing mail, you just crush, right? You know, it allows you to do a certain amount of damage. It allows you to a certain extent to blow past a sword blow, but, like, I don't think that I'm personally, like, I'm gonna wield a hammer. Axes are fun, but I'm not gonna do axes. Staves are fun, but I think not quite dangerous enough. Although I do, like, the thing about a staff is that you can wield it, like, to attack and defend at the same time. That's one of the useful things about a staff. And again, like, I guess if it's a heavy enough staff, then you don't have to be concerned, again, about the, like, armor class. But it's like, you know, with a staff, you're probably not gonna, like, have enough weight on the end to, like, really crush plate. War club style with the weighted rings of metal. I haven't seen that before. Halberd. So halberd, yeah, I mean, I could see a halberd. I don't think that I would want just a halberd, though. I'm gonna do the thing that's really annoying, and I'm gonna go with a thing from a specific property. But also, this is like the weapon that I fantasized about when I was a kid. It's like if you had a staff, but it was, like, bladed on both sides so that it was balanced. And if you want to make it extremely badass, you make it detachable in the middle so that you can then have, like, two kind of lighter weight, basically like halves of a halberd, something along those lines. But yeah, it's an interesting conversation to have. As far as I know, a bludgeoning weapon is good against chainmail, but you need something piercing to get through plate. I mean, it depends on how heavy your thing is. You could also do a spiked mace. Spiked mace is also good. Depends on the terrain and range. That's true, it depends. Staves are very dependent on fighting style too. Something like Salat would be cool. Staves are also practical in extreme weather conditions usually. Mace would be OP. Right. Yeah, the Morning Star for the win. Yeah. Is the Morning Star the one that you swing around? Like Sauron style? Has the big fucking thing on the end of his chain and he's like... That's called a flail. Okay, got it. If you can sufficiently bend the plate, it is worse for the person wearing being stabbed at times. Right, like if you collapse it in, then that's like gonna be crushing their chest. And like that's the reason why I got composite toe shoes instead of steel toe shoes, because a composite is usually rated to be almost as tough as a steel toe, except a composite, if it gets crushed and then the pressure gets released, it will pop back into shape and stop crushing your foot. Whereas if steel gets bent, then it will remain disfigured and your foot will not be able to get out of the shoe. What you need is a pole arm, like a bill hook, helps you get fruit and remove bodies away and move bodies away. A pole arm like a bill hook. Yeah, some kind of pole arm, I think. Some kind of modified pole arm is probably what my primary weapon would be. Something that maintains distance between myself and my opponent. Something that I can use to attack and defend simultaneously. Something that would allow me to defend against multiple opponents if required. Obviously, it would be great if I could use it as a walking staff sometimes. Something like a long hammer. I don't know what a long hammer is. What is a long hammer? Long hammer is just a hammer halberd, basically. Oh, yeah, okay. I kind of like that. Long hammer is pretty cool, but it's not a balanced weapon. Lux strikes me as a necromancer with all the life-death stuff. Listen, okay, so if I played D&D today, I would probably make a character that was a death druid, because that's a thing in D&D, and that is like mostly in line. Circle of Death, which is a druid subclass, it happens to be philosophically aligned with all of the things that I believe, except that a Circle of Death druid will cause death in order to fuel its magic in the same way that like a necromancer might, and like they believe that death, I guess, is like a... Hold on, let me read. The Circle of Death is dedicated to the study and manipulation of the energy of death. These druids see death as a necessary and natural part of the cycle of life and believe that by understanding and accelerating this process, they can better serve the world around them. I don't think that accelerating the process of death can better serve the world around us, but I do think that it's a natural and necessary part of the cycle of life. So these druids were drawn to the Circle of Death due to a life-altering event that brought them face-to-face with death. I guess that did kind of happen to me a little bit. Anyway, so we don't need to get into that too much farther, but like, I just think it's funny that like my philosophical beliefs are reflected in a druid subclass. So I'm kind of considering just starting to call myself a druid instead of a pagan, but I do think that druidism is a specific thing that might not have anything to do with what I want to call druidism. I played a druid in World of Warcraft, and that's where it started. It's really funny to me. These guys who are like, yeah, no, I mean, I'm not mad. Like, I'm genuinely not mad. And you can just tell they're fuming. Like, I'm not triggered. I assure you that I'm not triggered.